What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, that's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have more things we're going to be discussing. We have some more models that we want to go ahead and show you. GFS is still favoring the Central American gyre setup. We're looking at maybe something happening in the MDR according to the European. So we have quite a few things that we're going to be talking about, especially going to dive into the conditions and kind of analyze those a lot more. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and just dive right into it right here. So right off the bat, we're going to go ahead and start with the modeling. Actually, we're going to go ahead and start with the ensemble tracks, and then we'll go ahead and get to the operational, and then we'll do a deep dive in the conditions. I figured, today, let's just go ahead and get down to basics. Let's go ahead and talk about what's going on, what's being forecasted, and then give an analysis of those right here. So starting off with you guys right here, we're out to about 4 days out. The GFS is looking at this right here. What they're wanting is a tropical wave that's expected to come off the coast of Africa in the next couple days to potentially start to develop a signal, potentially south of the Cabo Verde Islands. I've been looking at that signal for quite a while. The operational models haven't exactly picked that up, so we'll have to keep an eye and see how that will ultimately pan out. But you still do have a pretty strong signal on that according to the GFS ensembles, as well as a few other models as well. But as you go ahead and go back to about 5 days out, you do notice that they start to consolidate, they start to organize a bit more, and you do know of quite a few of them have some power associated with it. We even have a 997 millibar system just west of the islands over here that you're going to want to pay attention to down the line. And going to 6 days out as well, you're seeing a lot more power associated with this, especially compared to yesterday. I believe yesterday you had the situation where you had a lot of ensembles, but they weren't really that strong. They were like 1,010, 1,008 on average. Now we're seeing a lot stronger ensembles quite across the spectrum right here. You're looking at 998, 998, 1,005, 1,007. Generally stuff in the upper mid 990s and lower thousands that are starting to generate over here that you're going to want to pay attention to. At least let's go ahead and look at this compared to the 12Z just to look at this for some context. Yeah, the 12Z definitely was a lot weaker. You had it a lot more spread out. The 0Z GFS for right now is a lot more concentrated. You have a lot more ensembles. There are quite a lot more. I believe there are like 20 to 30 of them out of the GFS spread right there, so you're going to want to pay attention to that going forward. Going to 180 hours out, you do start seeing those ensembles spreading out a bit more, but then you notice something starting to pop up over here in Central America as well. That's your Central American gyre setup, and I've looked at the operational run as well, and we'll show you that in just a second, but they are favoring a system that actually gets its act together and organizes by the around this time as well. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Yes, it is a little bit far out, and a lot is very subject to change. Don't remind me of Invest 91L. We've already went through that roller coaster of a ride. But ultimately, you have your situation where you are looking at this right here. You're looking at a pretty concentrated signal on this, actually, that you're going to want to watch out for. I will say you are seeing some stuff happening in the Eastern Pacific as well around this time frame, so you're going to want to watch out for that because that could potentially produce some shear that could run into the Atlantic with that, so you're going to want to pay attention to that as well, because if the system over there in the Eastern Pacific starts to kind of get its act together and generate some good outflow, it's going to potentially choke off a lot of the probability of the gyre setup forming. However, if it ends up taking more of its time to organize and develop, or if it moves further to the west at a quicker rate than expected, then I would anticipate a situation where you'd have a little bit more breathing room for that to happen. So just a few factors to pay attention to as well, and we'll obviously keep you updated, but still a lot more concentrated of a signal happening out in the MDR, and that signal starting to fire up again in the Central American region. And that continues for the next forecast run right here as we get to 8 days out. You're noticing not the European, the MDR is showing a lot more power associated with it, especially compared to the 12Z and even the 0Z from yesterday. Although I will say a lot of the powerful ensembles do move further up to the north. That's typically Coriola's force and all that stuff. But still, you have quite a lot of pop associated with this ensemble run compared to what we've seen previously. Now, depending on the validity of this or not, we'll have to watch out for that. We're generally going to need to watch down for the splashdown effect as well, because you know how that works. Basically, you have a model run where essentially, you're looking at a good chance for development, then the splashdown effect happens, and then kind of cuts off the chance for development. What we're looking for in this scenario is when the when splashdown happens, will it kill the signal or will it come back? And that's mainly the theme that we have with this. If we see a scenario where it splashes down, kills the chances for development with that from the ensembles, then we'll go, yeah, it was probably a false signal, overestimating overestimating the not the model, but the wave and all of that. So that's a possibility. But if you have a scenario where it splashes down, things get all over the place for about a day, and then it comes back even stronger, you're going to want to pay attention to that as well, because that at that point is, okay, it's over water, it's doing all of this. You're going to absolutely need to watch out for that as well. So that's just kind of your situation you're looking at right here. And now we'll go ahead and go to 9 days out to show you this. 9 days out, you do notice your gyro system is consolidating quite a bit more. Over here, you're seeing a lot more of the low pressure system starting to organize. Then going to 10 days out, you're starting to notice that occurring. It's actually kind of interesting. The GFS wants two possible scenarios. One scenario has this forming off the Bay of Campeche and then slowly moving to the north. And then the other scenario, which is more common, developing in the Caribbean and then moving north towards the Gulf. I will say either scenario is possible in this, but I think the more likely scenario is our Caribbean setup, and the operational run picks up on it pretty well too. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But going even more long term, you do notice that at least the signal over here, it is quite a bit more spread out, so please do keep that in mind. It's 11 plus days out, but you notice it with our gyre setup, it gets more concentrated. You're noticing more power associated with it, not just with the Caribbean signal, but also the Central American gyre, not the Central American gyre, the Campeche signal as well. So that's a kind of a red flag you're going to want to watch out for as well. But that ultimately, the situation at hand is ensembles are definitely picking up on more development still. This definitely does potentially pose a threat towards land in the long run, but there is a lot that is subject to change at this current point, mainly because of the situation that we have where, it's so far out, things are going to change inevitably. But the fact that we've seen such a consistent signal, especially in the Central America, in Central America, is pretty interesting. And we haven't seen a signal like, this is not like a one-time thing. This has been happening for the last 3 to 4 days or so. And the timing of it is a little wonky, but you do have a general consensus as to what may be happening down the line. So that's your GFS ensembles for you right here. We're going to go ahead and shift over to the European as well, just to kind of add some context and see what ultimately may be happening over there. And even the European is starting to show a few things as well. So here's what we got going on right here. European is showing tropical development potentially happening. You're definitely seeing an upswing in the potential in the main development region compared to what we've seen yesterday right here. So that's something to watch out for. Again, you're going to want to watch the splashdown and see how that pans out. And then you do have a few scenarios starting to pop up here and there. Then as we get to about a week out, you do notice a few more signals, and you do notice another wave behind it potentially starting to get its act together as well. So you're going to want to watch out for that as well. Then going to 8 days out, as well as you're continuing to see this right here, you kind of have these scenarios starting to pop up all across the MDR. Not particularly strong signals. I don't generally take too much stock into these at this current point unless it's super concentrated and there's a lot associated with it. I'm not taking a lot of stock into this at this current point. And then as we get to 10 days out, the European is interesting with this. It does want potentially something to happen, but it's kind of discombobulated. It's kind of all over the place at this current point. So we're still going to want to watch out for that, and we'll keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But now going to the operational models, here is your GFS run right here. Let's go ahead and show you what we're looking at potentially with this. So basically, here's what you have with your potential MDR setup. The GFS does show something kind of weak. It's potentially trying to get its act together, but it's not really taking that seriously. It's really not showing that much development in that area at first. The main area we're going to want to watch is the Central American Gyre, and we're going to go ahead and zoom in to the Western Atlantic just to show you this right here. So here's what we got happening. You're starting about, let's actually just check the vorticity on this just to see where this is actually originating from. So, okay, it's originating from Central America, not Venezuela like it was in June. So this is starting about 8 days out. You do start to notice some vorticity starting to increase across parts of the Caribbean as well. It's not particularly organized right now. It's going to take its time to consolidate, but still, by 9 days out, you're looking at a 1,003 millibar system that does start to get its act together off the Yucatan Peninsula right here, and then 999 millibars as it starts to, as those isobars start to wrap around and start to get a better idea of what's going on. Yeah, the vorticity is still a little all over the place, but it's definitely there, and it's definitely consolidating a lot more than it was previously. And considering that it's initialized in the right spot, I'm more inclined to trust it than I would be normally for a GFS run. But then as we get to not the Caribbean, the Gulf region, we're up to a 991, 992 millibar system as this approaches Florida and then makes landfall as a strong tropical storm to weak hurricane by the time we're about 11 days out. So please do keep that in mind. This is really far out. So obviously take it with a grain of salt, but you are still seeing this time and time again right here. This has been the theme for the last few days right here. Just from my curiosity, I want to see how how the wind shear is going to respond to this right here. The wind shear, what we're looking at least according to the GFS in the Gulf region right here, does start off relatively unfavorable, and you do have this system over here in the Eastern Pacific that I am watching, but I think it's going to be moving far enough west to really for it not to have much of an impact going forward. But then you notice that the kind of the trough that dives into the Gulf starts to collapse quite a bit, and you do start noticing the shear starting to develop at an angle. And this angle would normally not be that much of a difference. You would take a look at that and go, oh, Patrick, it's running into shear. Why are we talking about this? Well, the shear is at an angle to the point where as long as this system stays kind of far away enough away from it, it's going to drag the outflow and really cause for some consolidation and organization to take place. And I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing such a huge change in terms of the pressure and why it's bottoming out so quickly. So that's kind of what we're looking at right here, but it's also the same reason why we're not going to see this organizing and intensifying all the way up into landfall. You're looking at this running into the shear and starting to get chipped away at it as it heads towards land. So the wind shear is still a pretty big issue. I would say it's not really the most favorable. I would say it's more favorable at least right now, at least early before it starts to run into that. But still, you have a lot of time to figure it out. The wind shear has been kind of fluctuating in that region for that time frame, so you're going to want to watch out for that moving forward. But that's what we have for the GFS. Taking a quick gander at that. Let's go ahead and show you the European. European's more favoring the MDR setup compared to the Central American Gyre setup, and I'll go ahead and show you that. You do start seeing organization and development happening on the European, at least down the line right here, but by the time it starts, we're at 300 plus hours out, so that's ultimately not really that much to pay attention to. Looking at the Canadian, I don't really think the Canadian's showing that much either. It's mainly been the GFS and a few other ensembles that have been leading the charge on this. The Canadian has maybe something happening in the MDR, but not really too much from the Central American Gyre. It doesn't go far enough out to really give an idea on this. And lastly, we'll go ahead and show you the icon. I don't think the icon really shows that much Anyway, yeah, it really doesn't. It does show something happening in the MDR, but they're relatively weak. So that's what we're looking at right there. But now we'll go ahead and talk about the conditions because we looked at the models, we looked at the ensembles, looked at the operational. Now let's go ahead and go to the conditions because I want to give a deeper dive into this so we can give you an idea of what the heck is going on. So starting off, you have your sea surface temperatures. Not really that much needs to be said about this. You're looking at 28 plus degrees Celsius waters in the MDR, 30 plus degrees Celsius for the Caribbean and the Gulf region as well. So any water thing that develops in these water temperatures is going to have no trouble producing convection, consolidating, and organizing at a very fast rate. I'm not really disputing that at this current point. It's mainly the other conditions that I want to kind of look at more and give a closer idea of what's going on. So you have your water temperatures. We can go ahead and show you the ocean heat content. OHC continues to be pretty interesting. Look at what we're looking at right here. This is a ticking time bomb in the northwestern Caribbean. And ultimately, what you have going on right here is if anything develops off the coast of Honduras or Belize in that area and moves towards the north, you're running right into 175 plus OHC. That is a very large amount of it. That is a large amount of potential energy in there. And any system that starts to go in there, taps into it with the optimal conditions, can absolutely explode in intensity from that. And that is mainly my worry with the Central American gyre setup. The OHC is absolutely astronomical in that region. It's also astronomical in parts of the Gulf as well, particularly along the Loop Current and in the Western Gulf as well. And considering we still have a few months of the season left to go, we have September, we have October, we have maybe some things happening in November as well, you're absolutely going to want to pay attention to that. So that's what you have with your ocean heat content, and that's my main concern with this. Looking at the wind shear, we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but just to kind of reiterate and go, okay, what's exactly going to be happening with this? You're going to have this this trough starting to come into the Gulf region quite a bit. That's not really going to be favorable for development, but you are looking at favorable wind shear across much of the MDR over here. It's mainly the dry air that's been the issue for this season right there. That's expected to kind of decrease as time continues to go on. We'll watch out for that, but ultimately you do have this wind shear starting to kind of move into the move into the Gulf region right here. Although, interestingly, the European compared to the GFS doesn't have it diving as far south or as strong. So if we do see a wind shear scenario like the European, we could have a scenario where maybe the system has more time to organize and strengthen and before things start to get a little bit more unfavorable in that region. So that's what you have with your wind shear. Looking at the dry air aspect of it, dry air is going to be kind of the main thing with development. Dry air, I wouldn't necessarily be too worried about in parts of the Western Atlantic over here. You're looking at this, you're looking at 10 days out. You're not looking at the worst conditions, honestly. You do have a little bit of dry air, don't get me wrong, but you do have a lot of mixable dry air. So anything that starts to consolidate and produce good outflow can really mix out a lot of this dry air. And it holds true as well in the main development region, in my opinion as well. Yes, there is still some dry air in that region we need to watch out for, but it's more mixable dry air. So if we get a system that starts to consolidate and organize a bit more, you'll have a scenario where where kind of maybe the outflow and a few other factors like convection can kind of mix out more of that dry air. So that's your scenario you're paying attention to, and this is stuff we're going to have to keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But by and large, you are looking at these ensembles, you're looking at these models, and you're going, okay, our next big threat looks like it's going to be more from the gyre than the main development region. That's the main takeaway that I have with this right here. So that's kind of your deal with this right here. If you haven't already, please be sure to prepare. The hurricane season is far from over, and we'll give you the latest and greatest here on the channel. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. The goal, if you'd like to help out, hang out, or ask us some questions, feel free to join the Storms United Discord server. We have over 300 members in there. We get a lot of our help from there. A lot of the streams that we generate also is from the Storms United as well. They help out perfectly for that. But with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.